Hi, I'm Jana. I'm the founder of Humanitarian Data Academy, and I am here today to talk to you about how do you build a population pyramid in Power BI. Now, hopefully if you have found this video, you kind of know what a population pyramid is and you're trying to figure out how do you actually make it happen in Power BI. But if not, let me just quickly show you what it is I'm talking about. So what you can see on my screen here is like a really common visualization that people often use to show their gender and age split. So you might have like some age category data up here, and then you've got like males who are in that age category and females who are in that age category. And this is kind of what you often get if you just like pull it into a bar chart and it looks like this. But what you might want to be seeing instead is something that looks more like this, where we have it centered around the 0 value of your x-axis, and you've kind of got males on one side, females on the other side, with kind of those percentages that you can then compare. And it kind of looks like this one looks like a inverted pyramid on top of a pyramid. So anyway, but it's called a population pyramid. And different populations will have different shapes. And of course, it all depends on how you split up your age categories. What I've often found in development in humanitarian data, age categories will often be determined by the program you're running. So if you're running a maternal program, that's going to have its own set of age categories. If you're writing a report for ECHO or another donor, then they have their own set of age categories. If you're working in schools, you'll have a set of age categories. So what I want you to do is you determine your own age categories. I don't really care what that is. And what I'm going to try to do today is kind of help you figure out, well, how do you build the pyramid once you get your data age categories filled out. Okay, so I've opened up a new Power BI file now. And all I've done is I've loaded my household roster data set. This is just a test data set, and all it has in it is age and gender data. So if we quickly took a look at that table, it's just got males, females, and then a range of ages. Okay, that's the whole thing. And we're going to start playing with this. Now, the first thing you need to do is obviously set up those age categories. So let's do that first. I'm going to come to age. I'm just going to click here and I'm going to say I want a new group. And instead of bins, I'm just going to make this my age category, whatever you want. And I'm going to make this a list. And then I'm going to say, well, from 0 to 4, I want to make a group. And I'll rename that group 0 to 4. And then I will come here and say 5 to maybe 15. Let's group that, 5 to 15. And really, this just comes down to your program, so it doesn't really matter. For me, whatever you choose, whatever category you want, you go for that. All right, so I have set up my age category groupings, and so I've got that over here. And now what I want to do is start to think around, okay, so I've got my ages, my age categories, and my gender. And now I want to throw in a chart here. And I'm going to say I want to visualize my age category and my gender. Okay, let's color it by gender. Okay, and here's where you start to see that data. And all I'm going to do is throw on my data label so I can start to see, how many females, males do we see? And that's kind of how you get the initial kind of basic population data, sex and age into a chart. It's not yet a pyramid, but that's kind of where you can see the data laid out. This is kind of what we're going for in the end result. Okay, so great, you've got that. We can also show that either as count or as a percentage. So you can do kind of either of those in Power BI. Perfect. I'm just throwing that back to a count, and that's kind of going to be our reference image, okay? So let me call this our reference image, okay? Now, a couple of the things I'm also going to do is I want to sort these by 0 to 4, 5 to 15, then 16 to 44, then this, then, okay? Right now, it's not sorted. It's sorted kind of by the values. If I sort it by our age category, it's still kind of messed up just because it goes by alphabetical or numerical order and it counts that one. Anyway, so the way you would actually do this, which is actually a critical component to kind of getting our population pyramid working later on, we're going to just click on enter data, and column 1 I'm going to call the age category, and column 2 I'm going to call my sort order. Okay, so age category we're going to put in 0 to 4. Sort order is then 1. Okay. Oops. Great, so I have finished creating my little sort order column, and I'm just going to say, this is my sort order age cat table, something like that, okay? I'm gonna load that, and I'm gonna just come into my data model once that's done. Okay, you can see we've got these 2 here, and I'm going to connect my age category to my age category. I will leave that as is. And then I'm going to come into my table view here, and I'm going to add a column. I'm going to add a new column to my household roster. And that column is going to be called sort order equals, and I'm just going to say related. Okay. And then I'm going to say bring in the sort order. Okay. From that sort order age cat table. And it's then going to just bring in a sort order. I'm going to grab my age category column, and I'm going to say sort by the sort order. Okay, now when I come back here, it's now organized that into the proper sort order. 0 to 4, 5 to 15, 16 to 44, 45 to 59, 60 plus. Done. Okay, so here's my reference image. It's all set up. Now, how do we kind of start getting our pyramid? What we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of measures. So the first thing I'm going to do, I am going to come to my household roster table, and I'm going to say, let me make a new measure. And to kind of replicate this, I'm going to say count of males equals. Okay, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to count rows, okay, in my household roster. Okay. But I don't just want to count the rows. I want to do a calculate. So I want to calculate from all of the rows in the household roster, and then I'll do a comma, where the gender, okay, where the household roster gender equals male. Okay, so that's going to be all of my males. So I'm going to say that's my count of males. Now, if I throw in a card here and I count all my males, I throw in there, I've got 163 males. Now, if I then copy that and make a new measure, paste and count females. Okay. Then I can throw another card in here and put my count of females. Okay, so I know that I have got 163 males, 157 females. Okay, 163, 157. So it's about 50-50. Okay, and now what if I split that by age category? So instead of just showing these like this, I could actually put that as a stacked bar chart. Turn my data labels on so I can see that 163. And then I can put in the gender on the y-axis, and I can see, whoops, not gender. I want my age category on the y-axis. Oop. And I can see how that splits down, okay? And so I can copy that formatting over here and throw in the age category. And I can see how that would split down, either of those. So if we actually then created a single bar chart, and we threw in both the count of males and the count of females, and we split it by the age category, and we put all of our data labels on, we actually see that using measures, we can get this. Now, if I come up to my count of females, for example, and I multiply the whole thing by -1, okay, I start to see a pyramid, okay, which is awesome. Okay, and we've now replicated that very basic pyramid, okay? Now, what about if I want to make this a percentage? Can I show this value as a percentage? Okay, maybe. So if we show this as a percentage as well, oops, sorry. We show this as percentage. Okay, we're kind of getting there a little bit, maybe a little bit wrong. We want to, have 27 and 29 instead of 53 and 60. So it kind of looks right. Maybe our numbers aren't quite exactly the way we want them. So we actually need to figure out, and you can see that when I turn that to a percentage, it threw everything into the positive side of things. So it looks more like this instead of our pyramid. Okay, so we need to do a little bit more work here in that we need to make these instead of counts, we need to make these percentages. Okay, so let's go back to our count of females. Let's turn this back to no calculation. So we know that we're kind of getting there, but we need to do a little bit more work. Okay, so that's trial 1. Okay, so instead of count of females, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make a new measure, and I want to say, all right, instead of count, we want to do a percent of females. Okay, whoops, equals. And a percentage, we know that a percentage is a divide. It's always a divide. We divide one number by another number, that gives us a percentage, right? So I'm going to hold down my shift key and press enter. And then I'm going to tab in and say, we're going to do a divide function. Okay. Now, whoops, what did I do? Okay, so we're going to close that function. And we need, in a divide function, we need a numerator divided by a denominator. Okay, so we're going to put the numerator on one line and the denominator on the other. Now, what do we want to do? In our numerator, we're going to take that exact same count. Okay, for our numerator, we're going to say our count rows wherever the gender equals female, and that is our percentage. In our denominator, we just want to count all the rows. Count rows of, and then we want our household roster. Okay, that's our denominator. And let's see, that should give us a percentage, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna make a new chart here. Put this one under here. And we're gonna say percent of females. We wanna show there. Let's turn on our data labels. And let's throw age category on the y-axis, and 4% of females, we want to display that as a percentage with 0 decimal points. Okay, interesting. So not quite what we were looking for, but that's okay. We'll come back to it in a minute. Okay, but that's kind of what we want. We've got it now showing up on the left-hand side. Let's just copy this whole thing. And we're going to put our males as well. So we're going to make a new measure. And we're going to say percentage of males. Just so we can kind of get this looking like a pyramid here. Okay, we've got our percentage of males. Let's throw this one on there as well. Okay, and we want this to be a percentage. And we want there to be 0. Oh, and we left that negative sign in, so we want to take off that negative sign. Okay. All right. It's totally the wrong shape, but we've got exactly what we're looking for. Percentages on either side of our bar, of our 0 line on the y-axis, and it's kind of getting there. They're in percentages. They're on either side. Great, but it looks pretty wacky. So what's happening? Okay, so to see kind of what's happening, we have to go into this calculation and say, well, we're doing a calculate, and then we're doing a count rows of a household roster. So if we take this count rows of a household roster and we actually make a new visual that we're going to put over here. So these are kind of our, over here, these are kind of our references that are helping us understand what's going on in the back end, in the formula. And we're going to say new measure, and we want to see the count rows. So all rows count equals. Okay. And we're going to show all rows count in the y-axis. We're going to split that here. Okay, and we're going to put these data labels on. Okay, so what's happening is that for the count of females, so here where we have 36%, we have 9, and all rows counted by age is 25. So 9 divided by 25 is giving us 36. And 16 divided by 25 is giving us 64. So this denominator here, we actually want that denominator to be held consistent. We don't want it to be filtered by these age categories, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump into this denominator formula here. And we want all of these to be like the total population. So I want each of these bars, like when it divides 16 by what? I want it to be my total population, which is 320, right? So I want each of these bars to be dividing by 320. So how do we get that to work? So I'm going to come back up into my measure, so my all rows count, and I'm going to say, I'm going to calculate the count rows, okay? The calculate is going to be a formula called all except. So I want you to keep or ignore all the filters except gender, okay? So we're going to say, we want to look at the household roster table, and we want to look at the gender, whatever formula or whatever filter is on gender, that's fine. Otherwise, you can ignore all that filtering by age category, okay? And when you do that, this takes it to 320, 320, 320 for every single line, okay? So we want this to be our new denominator. So if I come into percent of females, I'm now going to delete that and replace it with this new denominator for both males and females. Boop. And then we have our population pyramid. So you can probably guess that this is looking very close to what you want it to be. We're not quite there yet because I'm going to show you something that's a little tricky here. So in this, let's just kind of take a quick look at organizing this a little bit. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to my percentage of males and females, just holding down the shift key so I can highlight them both. You can see the format is percentage. What we want to do is actually change the format to custom. And where it says 0%, that's how it's formulating or formatting the positive number. Then it has a semicolon and a negative 0%. I'm going to take away that negative. So that second number, that second 0% is how it's formulating or formatting the negative number. And we're just going to take that away. Okay. So that will look a little bit better. So we get rid of that negative sign. I can then clean this up totally by removing kind of this stuff from the x-axis. So I don't need my values there because I've already got the data labels on. And I'm not even sure if this is really helpful for the y-axis to have the title on. So I might just remove that. I do need the age categories. So I've got that here. And the kind of legend will say we can keep that for now. Okay, so I've got this. So if I then come up here and I put a slicer on, now this is where you just want to do some testing and figure out, okay, what do I want to happen to this graph when I put slicers on? So if I have a slicer that's like looking at gender and I only want to look at female, okay, what is happening? There's still males and females and showing percentages. It's like, because you can see that actually when I click male or female, the count of males and the count of females stays exactly the same. Okay, so we don't have any changes in the numerator. But what we do have is a change in the denominator. So it's multiplying everything by 157 because that's just females, everything by 163 because that's just males. So what do we want to do instead? So what we want to do is in this numerator, if a female is selected, we want that numerator to just go to 0, to go to blank, okay? To not even show on this, okay? So the last thing we need to do for these formulas is we're going to come up and we're going to add an if statement. So if, okay? Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one. If contains, and then we're going to put the values in the table name or column name. We're going to say the values of household roster gender, okay? So that's the table we want to bring into the contains function. We're going to do comma. We're going to say in the gender column, okay? And then comma, the value we're looking for is female, okay? So if we find females, okay? All right, if we contain, so if that list of values from the gender column contains females when that filter is on, then we can do our little calculation. Otherwise, we're going to comma, okay, so the other value on the end of the if statement. So if that's not true, then we're just going to say blank, okay, blank, and then we'll close off that whole if statement. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to copy this one. Okay, for the male, let's go here to males. We're going to do the same thing. So if it contains male, then do the calculation. Otherwise, do blank, and then close off that whole thing. Okay. Now, if we have female selected, it's now not showing females. Or, so it's not showing males. We have male selected, it's not showing females. And we're getting that same percentage that we are seeing in kind of our reference image. Perfect. Great. Lovely. Love it. So happy. Okay. And that is how you do a population pyramid. Hopefully that's really helpful. I think the other thing you could actually look at is if you do put a slicer in here that has the age category, and you're only looking at 0 to 4s, you can see that we still have that 320. We have the 9 and 16 as our female and male count. So we're still kind of getting that. If that's what you want to see, that's a little bit different than what you would see if you were looking at kind of that reference image of 36 and 64. In that way, you'd kind of want this to be all of the 0 to 4s rather than the 320. So I'll leave that for you. If you want me to make a video on that, I'll maybe come back and figure that one out too for you. But I think you just need to determine, like, what do you want this to look like? Because we could change that, but again, if you do that one and like female, then this shows 100%. And what is the value? Like, what number do you want to be showing? So you need to figure out actually what that needs to look like for your own dashboard, what you want that to look like. But for this, for our purposes here, I think if it works with that gender filter, I think it's working exactly the way we want it to. Then when we put this filter on, we're still kind of seeing kind of the percentage overall. But you might want something that looks a little bit more like this. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you liked it, give a thumbs up or leave a comment below what are questions you have or tips that you have for making this easier, understanding it better. Go ahead and subscribe if you would like to stay up to date with things we're learning and teaching at the Humanitarian Data Academy when it comes to all things Power BI, Excel, Kobo Toolbox, or GIS. So I will see you next time. Till then, happy dashboarding.